So I was asked by Ellen to talk briefly, which is always difficult for me, on the issue of racial justice and specifically regarding the transatlantic slave trade. I wanted to start by putting it into context. Certainly, I think for me and for many of us today, I think much of the focus on racial justice over the last year certainly has been catalysed by the horrific death of George Floyd, which happened in May 2020. The callous and brazen way in which his life was taken from him points towards a sin that's deep-rooted and in many ways unrepentant. From our relative distance here in the UK, it's easy to turn on individuals like Officer Chauvin and condemn them. But that alone does nothing to recognise the agency that we all have in creating a better society. One of the saddest things about George Floyd's death is that it didn't actually come as a surprise to a lot of people of colour. At the time, his was simply the latest in a long line of injustices that people of colour around the world have endured for centuries. The only difference, honestly, was that a larger number of people saw it, and due to being forced to stay at home, had time and opportunity to engage with the horror that was in front of them. It took a global pandemic, folks, itself an apocalyptic and truly revelatory event, to uncover what's been happening all along. In 2020, we got to see clearly that needless loss of liberty and life that's been going on for so many people of colour. With 2020 vision, many people had, perhaps for the first time, realised the fact that what they witnessed had not just come out of nowhere. This is where history connects with the contemporary. We must know this history. We must own the history and learn from it, because otherwise we will compound the mistakes of our forebears and continue to reap a bit of harvest from the seeds that have been planted before us. Here I'm reminded of some of my research that I'm doing into the Church of England's historic involvement in and support for the transatlantic slave trade. This racist system, which we all know was purely economic, relied on laws and statutes, individuals and communities to keep it going. It was given an air of legitimacy and in many cases a stamp of approval from people and places which should have known better. And as an ordinand within the Church of England, I'm sad to say that the Church was actually one such supporter. People used and twisted words found in our most holy book in order to provide spiritual and seemingly God-ordained support for the control of resources around the world. For a long time, the Church of England was silent on this issue, leaving it to others to lead the charge for justice. Furthermore, we know that a large number of clergy were in support of the slave trade, even lobbying Parliament for its continuation when opposition to it eventually did arise in this country, and they publicly celebrated whenever attempts to abolish the slave trade failed. Erstwhile, we greedily lapped up the wealthy donations, tithes and offerings that were given by those who worked in the slave trade and associated businesses, blood-stained builders of churches and congregations both at home and abroad. But we went one step further, owning our own slaves and land and trading in produce that promised to bring in massive amounts of wealth, a promise that was kept. But at what cost? The almost unconscionable truth is that at the time, we in the Church of England sold ourselves for money and popularity. Because the world was doing it and making a pretty penny, we saw the opportunity and turned a blind eye to the plight of those individuals and nations who were irreparably damaged by this abominable industry. Let it be understood that while we may have stopped trading in human life in that way, and Jen has mentioned the ways in which it's continued, the legacy that's been handed down continues to endure today. George Floyd's death was not the result of one or two bad apples that happened to crop up thinking and acting in a vacuum. Rather, it was the result of a continued reliance upon a zero-sum system that was designed to subjugate and elevate. To subjugate some and elevate others. There are nations, people groups and communities who yet still live with the benefits of that cruel and dehumanising trade. These benefits have been the driving force behind industrial and technological revolutions. Benefits which keep some in positions of power, keep businesses running well, bank balances running high, and hands on levers of power, ready to pass on to their progeny like the cruel socio-economic baton that it is. And on the other side, the side of the powerless, there are nations, people groups and communities who yet still live with the impact of historic slavery, whose cries for justice have yet to be heard and acted upon. We are witnesses to and heirs of the greatest ever acts of theft, the grossest and most sustained acts of violence and murder, followed by, as mentioned before, a comprehensive whitewashing of history. The clearest programme of disinvestment and subjugation, and the most blatant laundering of money ever. But what good does it do to speak like this, to talk about it here today, in this cathedral underneath this powerful symbol? Well, I believe that the aforementioned system has at the back of it a symbolic and spiritual element, and I call it out today as the spirit of fear. The spirit of fear is what gave birth to and nurtured that zero-sum system that created massive amounts of wealth on one hand and paid for it through the untold misery of millions on the other. It masquerades as strength and it pretends to be powerful, but at the root of it is still fear. The spirit of fear drives some to seek to take what belongs to someone else, claiming it for their own. The spirit of fear drives some to cling with clenched fists to what they have, unable to allow others to share in the blessings that they so readily enjoy. The spirit of fear prevents many of us from reaching out across man-made divides in order to see what unites us. And in the fight against that spirit, I urge you to take comfort in and courage from one of my favourite, yet often misunderstood verses from the Bible. In 1 Corinthians 13 it says, "Love is patient, love is kind, it doesn't envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it doesn't dishonour others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs, love does not delight in evil but rejoices in the truth, it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres." And at the very end of the verse it says, "And now these three remain, faith, hope and love, but the greatest of these is love." This is a powerful verse. It's often spoken over couples at weddings because it holds love to be the greatest thing that can be sought after, the greatest gift that can be given. Indeed, the whole chapter, when taken in context, is about coming together in unity. And we all know that there's power in unity. It's both encouraging and challenging, a damning indictment of what many of us, including those of us who profess a faith, think that love is. Now, we're not talking about romantic or sexual love, but the kind of love that's sacrificial, that's marked by service, regardless of status. The kind of love that helps first and asks questions later. The kind of love that wills itself to be less so that others can be more. The kind of love, that kind of love, is the vaccine, the antidote to the system and problems that we all know are in society today. That is the type of love that casts out fear. The words in 1 Corinthians 13 are holy and full of spiritual power for the tearing down of strongholds. And in that context, the tragic murder of George Floyd hasn't just brought people together and out on the streets to protest, but has inspired others around the world to do better, to think better, and to love better. He was by no means the first black person to die at the hands of an uncaring system, and unfortunately, we know that he wasn't the last. However, that watershed moment encouraged the world in 2020 to see clearly, and with this clear vision, to be inspired to hope, and with this hope to be renewed in our strength, and with this strength to be empowered to change the world for the better, not just for a few, but for all. Dr. Martin Luther King, much cleverer and better speaker than me, once said that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it tends towards justice. Now, when we finish, please do come and speak to me and ask about things that you can engage with, people and events locally and nationally that you can be involved with that are beginning to make a difference. But until then, I'm going to leave you with some lyrics, some mashed up lyrics, from a song written by Labi Siffray. And I'm reminded of the saying that he who sings prays twice. And so if you'll forgive me, I'll share this as my prayer to finish. The higher you build your barrier, the taller I become. The farther you take my rights away, the faster I will run. Deny my place in time, you squander wealth that's mine. My light will shine so brightly it will blind you, because there's something inside so strong. I know that I can make it, though you're doing me wrong, so wrong. You thought that my pride was gone. Oh no, there's something inside so strong. Oh, 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 something inside so strong.